So you're thinking about home educating and you've clicked on this video in the hopes to get some insight into what it's like and what you really need to know about home educating in the UK. So I'm going to share with you a bunch of different things that I wish someone had told me before I started home educating. This list is going to be really helpful to you if you are thinking about home educating, but you've not quite made that step yet. So don't buy anything, don't stress out about anything, don't worry about anything until you've watched this video. So a little bit of my story. In my mind, when my son was young, I had this thought in my head of my time was kind of running out with him. So from 0 to 5, I had in my head as a stay-at-home mum that I had all this time with him until he was 5 years old. And it was going to be some rich, amazing time of learning and playing and having loads of fun. And then from 5 to 18, I had this big block in my mind that said school. And of course, there's summers in there, but it is a big block of time that is school. And so I felt like when my son was young, that my time was running out and it was kind of ticking down until my son hit 5. And then it was like school and I was going to lose him and lose a lot of time that I'm going to spend with him. And so when my son was around 2 years old, I was looking at activities on YouTube trying to find educational activities for my son. And I stumbled across an American homeschooling mother who I watched her video in hopes I'd get some activity ideas for my 2-year-old. And I came across the whole concept of home education. And it was incredible. It was like a whole new world had opened up in front of my eyes. And I was like, wait, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't know this was a thing. And because it was an American lady, I was like, okay, maybe this is just an American thing. I didn't even know if you could do it in the UK. And so I searched. The first thing I searched was, is home education legal in the UK? And I found out that it was. And then I was just like, wait, I could home educate my son. And it was just this, like I said, it was just amazing. This whole new world opened up in front of me that I didn't even know existed because I didn't know anyone who home educated. I didn't know it was a thing. It was even less of a thing when I decided to home educate just a few years ago. And it is becoming more popular and more common now in the UK, but it is still not that common. And so there's still a lot of ignorance around home education and a lot of people don't know that you even can home educate. And so when I found out that I could home educate, it was this amazing new thing that I kind of went hard in on researching and finding out all I could about it. And I found out that it is not a backup plan, it is many families' first choice of education. And yeah, we jumped into home educating and we have not looked back since then. It is absolutely amazing and has done wonderful things for my children and my family. So let's jump into the first thing I want to tell you, which is that home education is probably not what you're imagining it is in your head. So your only reference point, if you don't really know much about home education or other alternative styles of education, if you're coming fresh to this from no background or anything like that, then your only understanding is school, right? That's what you know, you've probably been to school, that's what your frame of reference is school. And so when you think about home educating, you're using that as a reference and you're thinking about the national curriculum, the curriculum for excellence, and the way that they would do things in school, sitting down at desks, doing a lot of written work. And home education does not have to be like that. It can be like that, and in some homes it may be like that. But for the majority of home educators, and certainly all the home educators that I have encountered, it is not like that at all. There is elements of sit-down work, but a lot of home education is a lot more free and a lot more, the education style is varied. So you do sit-down work, but you might also go out and do day trips. You do education, comes in all shapes and forms and sizes, right? Not just sitting down at desks and reading and learning that way. You can read through things called living books. You can go out into the world, explore. You can do things with your friends. There's just so many different ways of home educating. Everyone home educates differently. And I would say very, very few sit down and do a 9 till 3 school day type thing. Most people are much more free, and it is a wonderful thing to know it is so freeing. And there is just so much choice out there. You may have seen different styles of home education already. You may have heard about Waldorf or Montessori. There's also unschooling, there's classical, there's traditional. There are so many different ways you can go with home education, and it is wonderful to have that choice. And a little side note on that this choice of different educational styles is amazing, but you don't have to also feel the pressure to fit into one of these styles. You don't have to label yourself as an unschooler or a Charlotte Mason home educator. You can just pick and choose from different things that you like from different educational styles and just do like a little pick and mix home education. Do this from there, that from there. Take some of the living book ideas from Charlotte Mason, take some of the unschooling ideas for your project time and mishmash it all together and make your own educational style, which is what a lot of home educators do, and that's certainly what our family does. Next up, I want to tell you something that may shock some people, some home educators even, and that is that home education is not for everyone. Some people will tell you home education is for everyone, and I would disagree with that because home education requires a lot of commitment, a lot of time commitment, a lot of sacrifice. No matter which way you look at it, it is a wonderful thing to home educate, but it does require a huge amount of commitment and parents that are willing to be extremely intentional in the way that you spend your time. And so if that's not you, you don't want to do that, then home education is not for you. But I think that if you've clicked on this video, then you likely are an extremely intentional parent. And I would say that if you really want to do it and you're really like, let's go for home education, I want to put my all into it, then home education is for you. The next thing I want you to think about is getting clear on your why. Why do you want to home educate? What is your reason? Now, you may still be thinking through all your reasons if you are still in the early stages of thinking about home education, but I would say that it's quite important to get clear on why you want to do it because it will help you farther down the line to stay true to your convictions and stay true to why you're wanting to home educate. So be like, I want to home educate because maybe it might be a reason like you want to prevent bullying and you see lots of bullying in schools and you want to prevent your child going through that. Maybe it's because of the rise of phones and AI in schools. Maybe it's because of your faith. You want to give your child a Christian education. Maybe it's because you want your child to have the freedom to learn at their own pace. There are so many different reasons to home educate, but I would take a little bit of time getting clear on why you want to do it, because when you then leap into home education, you can look back and remember this is why I wanted to do it. Because home education, like everything else, you'll have times of doubt, you'll have times of worry, you'll have times of struggle, and you'll be like, why did I decide to do this? It is an alternative educational pathway. It is not the norm in the UK to home educate your child. So you do need to get clear on your why if you're going to do it long term. And a simple exercise I think is really good. If you like to journal, then journal a big long thing about why you want to home educate. If you're not into that, just write a few different bullet points down and talk it through with your partner or with a close friend and just really mull on the reasons that you want to home educate and get clear on your why. The next thing to talk about is your legal rights and responsibilities, which sounds like really, that's a bit scary, but it's really not. It's just for you to know that home education is fully legal in the United Kingdom. I'm going to read out the little legal bit that I found, which is the Education Scotland Act 1980 says, "It shall be the duty of the parent of every child of school age to provide efficient education for him suitable to his age, ability and aptitude, either by causing him to attend a public school regularly or by other means." And the Education Act for England says similar wording to that. So all that to say, what is important to take from that is that whether your child goes to school or whether they are home educated, you as the parent remain responsible for their education. And you notice that it doesn't have a big long thing where it says you must sit down your child from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and do maths and then do English and then do geography and then do history and then do social studies and then do art and then send them off to play. It doesn't say that, right? It says provide an education suitable to their age, ability and aptitude. So it has to be suitable for your child, which I would advocate is amazing because you want to tailor an educational approach to your child, and you can do that way more easily at home than any teacher could do in a school. So you don't legally have to provide an education that looks like school. Now there is the new act that's been brought in England, what's it called? The Children's Wellbeing and Schools Act, which has been brought in England recently, and they're still working out what that's going to look like in practice. So I can't really give you any more details at the moment. What I will do is I'll link a couple of Facebook pages down below, which are really helpful and give you really up-to-date, useful information on what that means for your family. But all I'm going to say now is that something like this is not a good reason to not home educate your child. The fear of a bill like that or an act like that is not a good reason to not home educate your child. Still go ahead and do it if you think it's the right thing for your child. My next point is that it is very easy to get overwhelmed when thinking about home education. When you start to really research it and dive into what it actually means, sometimes the responsibility can start to weigh on you a bit, and you can research and research and research. And the more you read, the more things you find out, and the more complicated and difficult and overwhelming it feels. And so to bring it kind of right back, the best education for your child is the one suitable for your child and tailored to the child that you have. The child that you have, that educational approach that's going to suit them is the best one for your child. So someone might be doing Waldorf and be like, this is the best educational approach, but if that style doesn't suit your child, then it's not the best educational approach. What is best is what helps your child learn the most, right? And we sometimes have to kind of bring it back and stop ourselves being super overwhelmed by everything and just kind of put the blinkers on and look at our child and say, what is it that you need? The easiest way to become completely overwhelmed is to think years in the future about what your child might need in the future. So you're thinking, okay, my child is 5 now. When they're 16, 17, 18, they're going to need to do exams. Okay, I need to go and research about that and find out how they're going to do exams. And you overwhelm yourself and stress yourself with all the things that you feel like you need to know. When really you don't need to know any of that right now. You need to focus on the next step. And the next step is, are you going to home educate or not? And what I've done after that step, once you've decided, okay, home education sounds pretty good, then I have a free masterclass. You can click on it, I'll link it down below, and it's called First Steps into Home Education. And it takes you through the very first step you need to take in your home education journey. It goes through some of the common worries that you'll have in your first year, and it will really help you just to kind of reduce the overwhelm, block out the noise, and just to really focus on what it is you need to do. Focus on the next right step. And it is, of course, good to research and to find out more about home education, but you can go into research mode and research and find out, okay, what about this style? What about that style? What about this educational approach? What about that? And there's so much information out there that you can get completely flooded, stress yourself out completely, and you start to panic and start to think years ahead. And it's it can be good sometimes to have a longer view of what you're planning in the future. But when you're so early on and you're so just focused on everything and it's all just overwhelming your brain, you need to kind of just step away, focus on what the next right step is, and block out everything else. The next thing I want you to know is that curriculum is not that important. Now, there is a lot of home education homeschoolers online, and a lot of them are US based, and a lot of them talk on and on and on about curriculum and about which curriculum is best versus that, and for English what do you do for this, and for maths what do you do for this, and this is good for this child, this is good for another child, and it's so much information about curriculum, and you think, okay, curriculum is this really important, huge, big decision, and I want to spend hours researching that and trying to find the best possible curriculum for my child. And I want to let you in a little secret. Curriculum, in the first year especially, is not that important. It is not going to be what makes or breaks your home education year. In your first year of home education, it's not going to be the thing that you look back on and think, oh, I wish I'd chosen a better math curriculum. It's really not going to be. I was one of those mums who researched curriculum and thought, I need to find the perfect one. And now that I'm not in my first year of home education anymore with my oldest son, I look back on that time. And do I remember even doing curriculum? I definitely did curriculum with him, but do I remember what I did? Not really. What I remember was the books that we read and the time that we spent together and the things that we learned out and about with friends and in nature. And it was not the most important thing. So curriculum, yes, we use curriculum, and I do think it has its place and is important, but it is not as important as it is made out to be online. And you don't need to spend all these hours researching it, and it's really not this huge, overwhelming big thing, or it doesn't have to be anyway. You can just pick one and go with that. Okay, I want to tell you now as well. You don't need to have it all figured out. This kind of goes back to my other point that I was making about looking far ahead to the future. You don't need to have it all figured out. Like I said, the next right step is more than enough. You don't need to have all the answers. It can be good to be clear, like I was talking about before, it can be good to have your clear why you're home educating. And one of the reasons for that is when people ask you, oh, why do you home educate? You have a really clear, simple answer to give them. So when someone says, why have you chosen to home educate your child? You can say, oh, to give them the freedom to learn at their own pace. So it's good to get clear on your why, but you don't need to have it all figured out. And I don't think any home educator really has it all figured out. We're kind of just taking it day by day, month by month, year by year, trying to do the best for our kids. I don't think anyone has really this hugely long view of like, what's it going to look like 10 years from now? Because it's impossible to have that kind of view when you're doing a tailored education, because your child changes over time, right? And so it can be nice to have a plan, and maybe like a year by year plan, but you don't need to have it all figured out. And it seems like people online do have it all figured out. And I'm telling you now, none of us do. So what would I do if I were starting all over again? If I could go back to my first year of home education with my oldest son, what would I do differently? How would I make it the best year of home education ever? What would I do differently? So the first thing that I would do differently, I would block out all the noise. I would stop overthinking everything, and I would just focus on the child in front of me. I would stop overcomplicating everything, over-researching. What I would do is I would look at the child in front of me and make a clear plan based on their needs. So I would definitely have a plan. I'm not saying don't plan, definitely have a plan, because plans are so helpful. I would decide on very clearly what is our daily rhythm going to look like. So on the days that we're going to be based at home, this is what we're going to do. And this is what I've done now for our family, is I have a very clear daily rhythm of what we do every single day. So I'd focus on the basics. I'd make a very clear daily rhythm. This is what I'm going to do every day that we're home, this, and then this, and then this, and then this, so that we do have a very clear plan. And then I'd roll that into weeks, and then into months, and then it goes into the year. So we would have a very clear, very solid plan, but we would stick to the basics, stop overcomplicating everything, and stop overthinking everything. I have a video where I share with you the biggest home education mistake that home educators make in their very first year. So I'll leave that linked here for you to go and watch next. If you have any questions for me, leave them down below and I will be happy to answer them. And I'll see you in my next one.